Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Let me see if I can just expand the window a little bit. Perfect. So everyone can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When I give these lectures, I like to do it in a way that allows participation, question and answers as we move forward. You know, I think that this is really a delicate subject. And so my goal is to make sure that everybody who is here in this space is able to have a clear understanding of the material that I'm presenting. So especially when it comes to, I think, the supersensory powers, which is a really important topic for us as theosophists, because I think that it's really important for us to have an understanding of the supersensory powers and eventually to begin to incorporate them into our own investigations. So I have since 2007 or in 2007, my intuition opened through the practice of meditation. Now, I know that people have different understandings of what intuition means, but to me, intuition is associated with the power of claircognizance. Does everybody have a clear understanding of the different abilities and what they are to begin with? Let me see if I can find a text. So I'm going to divide it into a few different, I'm just going if I can change the color. Eraser, draw, select, stamp, format. Here we go, black. Okay, so we have claircognizance. We have clairvoyance. Anybody else? Clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairaudience, and what is one of the last ones? Clairsentience. Okay. When I think of the intuition or the supersensory powers, I think in terms of these four abilities. I was talking with my friend Adele here a moment ago, and we were talking about the intuition, and she said, I just know things. So to me, when I hear that, the power of knowing is associated with claircognizance. A person who has claircognizance, they just receive these, what I'm going to call incredible insights or awarenesses, or I've heard the term used, downloads, recently, that they receive a download of information and don't have to go through the normal process of induction and deduction to arrive at an understanding. It's just that they know. So claircognizance is the power of knowing. Clairvoyance, I think it seems to be that everyone is aware of this ability because there's a lot of literature on it. And this is essentially the power of seeing. And now we know that it has to do with superphysical seeing, seeing beyond the physical realm. But I associate clairvoyance with the ability to look at the planes of matter, the superphysical planes of matter, as one would look at the physical world around them. Clairaudience is associated with the power of hearing. So for a person who has developed clairaudience, they have the capacity to hear sounds in the superphysical realm, or to talk with deceased or disembodied loved ones, or as in the case of Jeffrey Hudson, he was able to talk with the Devas, and he has a lot of he's detailed a lot of those conversations in his work. Clairsentience is the power of feeling. So for me, when I work with a client or clients, one of the things that I like to do is actually follow their emotional states. So I like to feel what they're feeling. It helps me understand how they feel about the things that we're talking about. So clairsentience is actually the power of feeling the feelings of other people. Now, I know that in some of the older books, when people use the term claircognizance, or I'm sorry, clairvoyance, they're really using clairvoyance as an umbrella term for all of the different forms of the intuition, like claircognizance, clairaudience, clairsentience. I mean, have many of you encountered that, where they use the word clairvoyance to uncover, like, in fact, I was reading The Chakras by Charles Ledbetter the other day. And under the term clairvoyance, he includes clairaudience because these powers often happen together. So these are the main forms of intuition. There are other forms, but these are, when I think of the supersensory powers of a human being, I generally think of these four. Are there any questions so far? And feel free to ask them, you know, as long as you can ask them if you're not muted, or if you want to type in a question or response, you can feel free to do that as well. And since I'm presenting here through Zoom for the first time, I don't know if anybody's typing anything.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hear me out. I was just going to say, in listening to these, it's kind of funny. I like sometimes I'll have one of these, and then another time I'll have another, but I don't consistently have all of them. It's like this, just every once in a while, like I'll hear a voice and it says this, that, and the other, or I'm a writer and I'll just be able to write all this stuff out. And I'm not sure where that one would fit in, like where you can write stuff out that you just kind of hear. Maybe that's knowing, I don't know.
Yeah, that to me falls under knowing.
Knowing, but do you run into people that have like a smattering, like a little bit of this and then there'll be a little bit of that, and it won't be consistent, just be kind of a smattering of stuff?
Yes, I do encounter this a lot. And to me, I have developed a name for it. I refer to it as the intermittent intuitive functioning. So this is the supersensory powers that sometimes work and sometimes don't work. And
right.
What's really happening is that, I mean, for instance, how many people here in or during the practice of meditation, how many people are able to hear or receive information more clearly? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah. Most of us, because what meditation does is it actually takes our chakras and brings them into a higher state of functioning. So all the cares and worries and troubles that we deal with in the world while we are essentially awake are removed from our consciousness when we are in a state of meditation. And so during that state, the chakras that are normally just on the cusp of functioning will be uninhibited, and they will begin to function at a higher rate, which means that now they have, for the moment at least, during the meditation practice, they have, I call it kicked on. So now they're functioning as they should. And during that state, we receive information. For instance, when claircognizance opened for me in 2007, I didn't exactly know what happened. I just knew that whenever I sat with somebody in meditation, that I would know things about them, incredibly detailed facts about their existence. Now, I didn't know how I knew. I didn't know why I was knowing it. I only knew that in that meditative state, when I sat with somebody, I received clear insights about them. And I felt compelled to share it with them, so I did, and I received validation of the information that I shared. Well, outside of the practice of meditation, I did not receive information or insights or knowing. It only happened during the practice of meditation. As I continued to meditate, though, my intuitive abilities came under conscious control, which is what we seek. So it has to do with, so the woman who was speaking, it has to do with the state or condition of the chakras. And if they're at a level of development where they're beginning to function intermittently, it results in the intermittent receipt of information. So sometimes we might receive information claircognizantly or clairaudiently, or we might receive feelings, or we might even see things sporadically. Like I know a lot of people in their meditation practice, they actually see things, but these things come through very quickly and they leave very quickly. And so again, these are just examples of what intermittent function of the chakras look like. So we have claircognizance, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Now, to me, I'm going to go back to the drawing, and this is one of my favorite things. Let's see. Yeah. Is to begin to look at where the supersensory powers are located. So for us, I'm just drawing a profile of a human being. Okay. This is a side profile. And this is the central channel. Everybody knows what that is. Is that true? The Sushumna. And so the supersensory powers, what power is this? The third eye. Anybody? If you have an open and functioning third eye, what are you able to do?
See.
You're able to see.
See.
Exactly. And for those of you, if you have an open and functional crown chakra, do you know what that results in?
Downloads of light.
Downloads of light.
Light of God, yeah.
Claircognizance is associated with the open crown chakra. Clairvoyance is associated with the open third eye. Clairaudience, I know that there's a little bit of disagreement. You know, Charles Ledbetter said that he thought that the clairaudience was associated with the throat chakra, but I actually see it associated with the ear chakras. So for me, clairaudience is associated with the ear chakras, or chakras that are associated with the ears. And the solar plexus center, that is associated with the power, the supersensory power of what?
Clairsentience.
Clairsentience, clear feeling. Now, what we know from the early Theosophical writers is that the supersensory powers are something that is going to be essentially possessed by humanity as a whole as we evolve. Right? I mean, I think I've heard it said that we are in the fourth round, developing powers or abilities that will be present in is it the sixth or seventh round? The idea is anyway that we are at a different evolutionary scheme at this point. And so we are developing powers and abilities that eventually everyone will have just naturally through the process of evolution. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about, well, sometimes I get knowing and sometimes I get hearing, but sometimes they don't work at all. Well, sometimes the ear chakras may actually be in a closed state, or what I would call an intermittent functioning state. The crown chakra too, where it's not functioning all the time to receive downloads. Or I've even had, my experience was when my third eye began to open, I would receive glimpses of information that would come through, but I really wasn't able to sustain an image of something in that realm. So it would come and go. And then the same thing with the feelings of other people. Sometimes I would know exactly what people were feeling, at other times I wouldn't. But once we move beyond the state of intermittent functioning, like when the crown chakras function all the time, that person will definitely be claircognizant. If the third eye center is functioning all the time, that person will be clairvoyant. When the ear chakras are open and functioning all the time, that person will be clairaudient. In the solar plexus center, if that's open and functional, the person will be clairsentient. What's really interesting also with the supersensory powers is that we are all, you probably know this, but we're all on different evolutionary schemes. What that means is that now, or today, with the way that I have grown and evolved as a soul through my incarnations through matter, has resulted in the growth and development of a chakra pattern that is different from Joe, different from Adele, different from Anne, etc. So if we were to take a snapshot of all of our energy fields and look at them, what you would see is basically a record of our evolutionary history. What this also means is that each of us, over the course of our incarnations, we have developed some of our intuitive capacities to some degree, right? Now, as I outline the clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairaudience, and clairsentience, how many people recognize that you are one of these above all of the others? Anybody? Go ahead, Adele. You are?
I'm two of them. I'm knowing and feeling. I can literally, if I got somebody in a past life regression, Of course, I'm in alignment with them and in tone with them the whole time, but I know who they were and why they're having the problems with the people they're having in this lifetime. I just can see it for them. I don't ever tell anybody because that's for them to find. I don't want to contribute that. But when people are sick, I just lie down on the bed and just leave the body and just jump into them and start deleting and rescripting and healing them the best I can. But I can feel when we're laying off layers of pain or fear or ancestral patterns. I can actually feel it peeling off, which is kind of freaking me out right now. But
Well,
I was doing it this morning, but it's, I really, I change into various vibrations all the time. At will, though. Not, I mean, I do it at will.
Yeah, and I think this is important to actually understand what intuitive abilities that you've developed over the course of time.
But are you an empath? Is that why you get the clairsentience? You can tell what people are feeling?
Well, this is what's happened for me. When my intuition opened, what happened is and this is something that pertains to all of us. The one thing that happens with meditators, for instance, this is the picture that I draw of the meditator, who's meditating, on the floor, right? The meditator is generally doing one thing. And what is that? Do you know? Anybody? What is the meditator normally doing in meditation? What's the goal? Go ahead.
Clearing his mind.
Clearing his mind?
Yes.
That is certainly one thing. From my perspective, the meditator is normally meditating somewhere on God. Okay? Now, I think that what happens is that during the course of meditation, all of the focus on God, awareness of God, spiritual study, spiritual practice, it focuses energy at the point of the crown chakra and results in its development. Now, this is why a lot of meditators actually begin to spontaneously know things. In fact, what they begin to register, because the function of the crown chakra really, given its upward orientation, it's not to receive vibrations horizontally from the physical world around us. Instead, and we'll talk about this, I think, tomorrow, it's meant to receive impressions or data or information from the solar logos and downloading or catching these vibrations or waves and taking them into the consciousness of a human being. This is one of the major reasons that humanity is beginning to change at an exponential rate, is because meditation is now a global practice. And what that means is that the crown chakra of humanity is now in a state of activity that I don't think that it has ever been in historically with the advances of meditation. So now you have people in every corner of the world who have, through the spiritual practices, who have opened the crown chakra to one degree or another, and they're starting to receive impressions from the mind of God. And that through that practice, we actually now are able to incarnate heaven on earth. Okay. And I see this happening. I feel it. I see it. So in the beginning, my crown chakra opened and I began to know things. Now, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear anything, and I couldn't feel anything. But as I've continued to practice with people, and I practice probably 3 to 5 hours a day still, 5 to 7 days a week. And over the course of time, this has actually brought all of these abilities into simultaneous functioning. So now where there was a single sensory experience, now there's what I refer to as a multi-sensory experience. Okay, now when I engage a person's energy field, I know, I feel, I hear, I see simultaneously. Okay. And I do practice a lot. I actually work with 3 to 5 clients a day. And because this is not, it's not a 9 to 5 job for me, but this is a way of life. So it's a much different approach to my healing practice. Is this helpful so far?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions that you have so far? anything. I think it's really important to be able to get clear if you have a question or thoughts.
What is the ear chakra?
The ear chakra. Let's take a look at some of these separately, shall we? Okay, like we did with the crown chakra. I'm going to see if I can just erase this. So we don't need this slide anymore. If you want to, get out your phones and take a quick picture of it before I erase it. Or are you good? Good? I don't know if we're being recorded or not. Okay. So the ear chakras really are like any other chakra. If you look at it from the side, in fact, what you would see is basically the standard shape of a chakra, which is like a convolvulus flower. Now, again, this chakra tends to go through stages of development. And what that means is this. I know I've seen several people who have highly developed ear chakras, and they seem to have these common traits or characteristics. The first trait, the common trait or characteristic, is that they have exceptional hearing. Okay? I mean truly exceptional hearing. In fact, I was walking with a friend of mine a couple months ago, and she was asking me questions about the human energy field. And so oftentimes I'll look at a person's field that I'm with, and I'll draw on it as an example. So I looked through her field and I said, well, for you, for instance, your solar plexus center is not very developed, but your ear chakras are incredible. And she says, well, what does that mean? I said, well, people who have highly developed ear chakras normally have very acute hearing. And she said, oh my God, my kids tell me, Mom, you have bionic hearing. Or she would say that I will, like when I was sleeping at night, she said, I would hear my daughter at the other end of the house open her bedroom window and slide out and then leave the house. So there's that level where we begin to take in more sensory information, okay, at a physical level, but then we begin to also hear things outside of the physical realm. And this is where communication with disembodied beings, disincarnates, beings who have bodies of finer states of matter. This is where a form of communication that truly does resemble speaking occurs. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but there are the major chakras and then there are minor chakras. So like there are chakras that are associated with many points of the body, like with the eyes. So each eye has a chakra associated with it, a minor chakra. The nostrils, actually, they have small chakras associated with them. There are chakras in the palms of the hands, in the palms of the feet, or the arch of the foot. So there are minor chakras, and I would normally classify the ear chakras as a minor chakra. Now, what else is fascinating is that, remember, the history of a person tends to determine what chakras are developed and functional. What I tend to see frequently is that people who are in practices that require listening, psychotherapists, some nurses and teachers, where they're really forced to listen, they have highly developed ear chakras. Is that helpful to the person who had asked about the ear chakra?
Yes. I did know about some of the minor chakras, like in the hands and the feet and little tiny ones in the toes, but I didn't know about eyes and ears. And I guess those are located right just coming out of the ears, huh?
Yeah, basically if you were to look at a person, so I'm going to draw this from the side. I'm going to draw an ear. So if that is a straight on, you would basically see it look like this. Okay. Now, again, because our development is different for each of us, we're going to have a different pattern of development. And I'm going to look through your field for just a second. Okay, so you're like, for instance, if I look through your energy field, your left ear chakra is actually more developed than your right ear chakra. Your right ear chakra is what I would call damaged. Okay, So to me, usually there's an association between damage of a chakra and damage of hearing loss, which I don't know if is true for you. But again,
yes, I think it is. I think it is because, yeah. I mean, I think I can hear, but I don't hear a lot of what some people say. So I think that's a clue.
yeah, I think it's probably more in your right ear than your left.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that your highest developed chakra is actually your solar plexus. So to me, that would mean that you are constantly receiving information of a feeling nature pertaining to the people around you. Do you resonate with that?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like I said, your ear chakras, you know, the one is damaged, the one is marginally developed. Not much in terms of your third eye, but your next highest functioning center would be your crown. But your solar plexus center is more developed than your crown. Your crown would be considered a second, your second dominant intuitive ability. So do you also receive these instances of just knowing things?
Yeah, I do.
Can you give us an example?
Well, there have been periods of times, really depending on my energy, but it used to be if somebody wanted to know about energy, I could talk for an hour or 2 hours about energy and the development of energy and all this stuff about energy, and I had no idea how I knew that. It's not all, I mean, I don't have that right this minute, but, you know, I can just remember a time when I could just talk forever about energy. And also during meditation, I would have things like all kinds of physics, even though I'm not a physicist, but these formulas would come through my mind. Okay. Or books would come through, like the whole book would just come through.
Now, what do you think is most active in you? Is it, you know, are you constantly in touch with the feeling states of other people compared to, you know, the times when you receive downloads? Which would you say is more active or more present?
Probably feeling of other people.
Feeling of other
and
people.
That kind of gets me in trouble.
Well, you know, I think that, you know, for me, I find it really helpful to know what people are feeling. Now, I can go a little bit beyond that and look at the reasons that people may be upset, or what, you know, for instance, if something's wrong, I can usually locate what that really is. So, you know, if we were to just take a side glance at our friend Anne's field, I'm going to draw another. All right. So if we have this, like her crown chakra looks something similar to this, okay? While if you look at her solar plexus center, what do you notice here?
She's a feeler.
She's a feeler, but in terms of the size, right? It's bigger. It's bigger, right? So this capacity is essentially on all the time. See, the thing with the supersensory powers is that once the chakra is open and functional, just like our physical senses, it's continually taking in information from our environment, right? Just like when we're walking down the street, we hear everything, right? And if our eyes are open, we see everything. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but sometimes if we're walking down the street, we smell everything. I was one time I was traveling to Sao Paulo, and I was walking through the streets of this, I think it was the third largest city in the world at the time. And it was the worst smelling place I've ever been in my life. And I've been on farms. So, but you know, our nose, our ears, our skin, right? All of these abilities, these senses are open and running data all the time. When our chakras developed, they're basically doing the same thing. So when your ear chakras are fully developed, you're likely going to be in the state of continuous hearing, or in the state of, in terms of the solar plexus center, continuous feeling, or in a state of continuous knowing. And the functionality of the chakra is actually somewhat related to the size of the chakra as well. For instance, if we look at this, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I compare the ability to use these. I consider the size like I call it surface area. So the greater surface area of a chakra, the more information that it catches. Does that make sense? So we know that the purpose of a leaf, for instance, is photosynthesis, right? So we know that the purpose of a leaf is actually to do what? I'll give you a hint.
Energy.
But
To create energy out of the sun.
It's to catch sunlight, right? So now we as we go out into the backyard, there are really small leaves. And I have seen leaves that are as big as a human being. So the larger a leaf, the more surface area it has, the more energy or the more information it can basically capture or receive. So when you see a chakra that is greatly developed, what that means is that it has more surface area, which means that it's now able to collect more information from the world around it.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
I do not mind at all.
I have quite a few of these abilities, except feeling is not real strong for me. And I have noticed over the years, it's harder and harder for me to be places because I am picking up too much information. And when I go to like interacting with people, I know what's going on, I hear what's going on, and actually it's rather overwhelming, so I stay home a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple problems here. Do you mind if I use you as an example?
No, fine.
Okay. So the first one is that the way that your ear chakras are developed, your ear chakras show some distortion,
Okay.
but they also show some level of hyperdevelopment. What that means is generally this means that the person I'm looking at is sensitive to sounds. Okay. Do you find yourself sensitive to sounds?
Somewhat, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you give me an example?
Of sounds?
Yeah. Like a sound sensitivity.
Well, I can jerk if loud sounds come, or I will react to sounds. It will scare me, or it will, yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. And I'm doing this for everybody else who's here to help them understand what it means to have the ear chakras hyperdeveloped. That now there is some sensitivity to sound. Okay. Now, if you don't mind, I can talk with you a little bit further about why your solar plexus center doesn't work. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm open.
Okay. And I'm only doing this because I think it has an instructive value. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I think that it's going to harm you or it's going to be embarrassing, I won't do it. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. But with you, if I look at your solar plexus chakra, okay, this is, again, it's a profile, okay? Mm-hmm. Your solar plexus center kind of has the resemblance of a knot, okay? So rather than it looking like a convolvulus flower, it kind of has this appearance here, okay? Now, when I look at this and trace its history back, and this is another thing that you can do once you have these other abilities under conscious control, is that you can touch something and you can basically go backward in time to figure out what happened to it. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, I feel like you have suffered what I would call a number of abusive relationships or emotionally volatile relationships.
Correct.
Okay. So what happened is that those emotionally volatile relationships basically blasted your solar plexus center and have damaged it to some degree from the outside, but from the inside, you have tried to build up a defense against feeling the significant volatile emotions of other people.
Probably, okay. Yes.
So what this does is it takes this particular supersensory power offline. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So now we go to clairsentience and we're like, well, because of the history here of conflict around this, this is no longer an option to receive information this way. Okay. Now, the good thing is that it's not really permanent, but based upon your history and the unconscious and things of that nature, it has resulted in this configuration that is healable, by the way. And then with your ear chakras as well. Now, this is kind of what your ear chakras, this is what an ear chakra should look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yours basically have this appearance, okay? So they show some distortion, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't have words for some of these things. But they show, again, a normal chakra from the ears would look like this. Yours shows hyperdevelopment and distortion. And this is when I look at that, I understand that you are sound sensitive, as I indicated, but also still able to receive information. And I think the key point for you is that part of it is the difficulty in terms of going out into public. For me, when I look at your field, it has to do with being the sensitivity to sound.
Okay.
And simultaneously sort of being able to know some of the thoughts of other people through the crown chakra.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I definitely know what people are thinking. I do all the time.
Yeah, and this is, I think, and this is, it's really, it's funny too, right? At some level, but I have practiced meditation as well, and I do know the thoughts of other people. I can't say that that I'm looking all the time, but sometimes when I'm talking with somebody, I know what they're thinking. I know why they're thinking it, et cetera, et cetera. And so, imagine being in a room where your crown chakra, your claircognizance is high functioning, or being in a group with other people. And now you have, 100 other people walking around you, right? All of that information is somehow targeting your crown chakra and causing an overload of information coming through.
Yes, it does. It does. And like we've had riots in my city, and it's like this wave of energy, like I can get the thoughts, and actually it can be overwhelming for me, and that's the truth, because it's like it's so much energy, and sometimes it's anger or fear or frustration or whatever that people are dealing with.
Yeah, and see, I think that given your history, if you experience angst or anger or any of those sorts of negative emotional expressions from other people, that it would trigger you because of your own history.
Okay.
Okay. So that's another thing to be aware of.
Okay.
But is this,
oops, sorry.
Just asking if this is helpful.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and for everybody else who's a spectator here or attendee, is it helpful to see things like this?
Yes.
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 I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Shanti.
Shanti, yes. So is it safe to be walking around with your chakras open all the time? Or that's one thing. And another is, like, all of these imbalances, are you going to, in your chakra talk, how to bring these into balance?
So that's a really good question. So let me answer this way. The physical sense organs are essentially ways of interpreting our physical environment to essentially ensure our survival. Would you agree with that? So, to answer your question, would you walk around with your eyes shut, your ears shut? How long would you survive in that world by walking around with your senses closed, right? So our physical body and the physical senses are essentially there to guarantee or ensure our physical survival. The chakras are actually our super physical sense organs, and they are there to actually ensure our spiritual survival. Now, there is some crossover or convergence that, you know, as they are brought under our control, life becomes easier. Okay. But the goal is to actually, and probably many of you know this, the goal is to actually, through the process of evolution, open all the chakras and to bring them into a state of perfect functionality. Okay, that is the goal of evolution. Now, so to walk around in the meanwhile and to plug up your chakras for one reason or another actually defeats the purpose of evolution. Once the chakra is plugged up, right, we stop evolving that chakra. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And so we have seen instances where either a chakra is damaged or not open or super open. So my
Right.
question is, how do you bring these into balance? Is it a daily practice to open it, but to keep it in balance? Because I wouldn't want to be walking around constantly being bombarded by other people's thoughts and energies and, you know, taking in so much stuff where I can handle it myself. Has that ever happened to you?
Well, that I don't experience so much of, honestly. And I don't, because my chakra, the chakras that I use in my work are not really damaged. So they are largely under my conscious control. So
And how do you do that? What is the practical way of doing that?
the practical way of doing that, unfortunately, most people find repulsive. Okay, but this is my recipe for bringing your intuition under conscious control. Everybody, I really sincerely believe that everybody can do it. This is the recipe. You need 3 to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week at least, for roughly 10 years.
But is it 3 to 5 hours continuous or?
So when my intuition opened, I was meditating at that point in time, roughly 2 to 3 hours a day, normally. And there are actually books that indicate this, that if you meditate roughly for 10 to 12 years and you sit in a certain asana, you will develop siddhis, siddhis.
Yes,
And there's truth to that, you know.
yeah.
And so it's really a matter of taking the time that's necessary to develop or cultivate the underlying consciousness to be able to, I guess, divest oneself of one's conscious mind to recede into the unconscious or the soul mind. Now,
Go ahead.
well, so this is partly a joke and partly a reality. Now, I know a lot of people who have incredible control over their abilities, that I've met them, and they can scan my field like I can scan their field. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? And they're like, well, I'm in constant practice. I've been practicing for the last 15 to 20 years. And I meditate, and then I do my energy work with other people. Now, the reality is, while most of the chakras that I use for the intuition look pretty good, the rest of my chakras are just like everybody else's. You know, they show distortions. They show, significant develop here, insignificant development there, distortion here, distortion there. And the reason that is the case is because we are at a point in our own evolutionary development where we're only approximately 25% of the way toward our goal. That means that in the amount of time that we have been incarnate in the earth plane or in the solar system, that we're only roughly 25% of the way there. Now, how many people have ever eaten a cake that's only 25% done? Anybody? it's probably not a cake that you'd want to eat, right? It's not going to be pretty. It's probably not going to taste good. And this is sort of a metaphor, my metaphor for the human energy field, that at this point in time, your energy field, our energy field is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be highly functional because we're only 25% of the way there. That means that taking what we have, which is really a state of, it's a state of imperfection, but I think of it really as perfectly imperfect, given our evolutionary timelines. Okay. Now, my goal as a healer, when I work with a client, is to look at their energy field and to find out where their major distortions are, and to help them correct the distortions to resume their evolutionary development, or just to simply remove the pain state so they can experience joy again at that level of consciousness. You know, for you, for instance, you know, I'm scanning your field, and it's really the greatest point of difficulty in your field of distortion is in your root chakra. Okay, and I really think that this is related to my sense is a history of not really wanting to leave your homeland, but being forced in some way to leave. Go ahead.
That's weird that you say that, because I left my homeland over 30 years ago and was quite happy to leave it.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, but if I look at your field, you know, sometimes we leave because we have to, right? Or because we want to. And then sometimes we leave because we have to. And I think that leaving because you have to, or because if you're forced to go in some way, leaves a part of you behind. But there's so the root chakra has vortices in it. And one of your vortices is shows like it's not in the proper place. So when I look, this goes back toward your homeland. And let me look. No, there were parts of that place that you were deeply attached to before, even when you left. And that shows up in your field as sort of I call it a longing. Okay. Go ahead.
So longing for homeland, is that what you're saying?
I think that there were people that you were attached to, places that you were attached to. Again, it shows up in your root chakra. Okay.
Because some people ask me, well, don't you want to go back and live in your country? I say, I can never go back and live in my country.
Yeah, you know, I know lots of people who are what I would call bicultural at this point. You know, you can't go back and you know, you're not like them psychologically and emotionally, but yet you're also not like the group of people that you're around. So the sense of belonging is somewhat compromised because you're not fully.
Oh yeah.
You got that part?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, I got that part. Yes.
Yeah. So the idea is that, you know, all of your chakras are not going to be brought into a state of perfection. What the best thing that we can hope for is to take the chakras that are functional, that show distortions, and try to remove those distortions to bring them into a higher state of functioning. And this is, you know, something that can actually be done through the supersensory powers themselves. You know, once you can, you know, and there are really incredible abilities that are outlined by the Theosophists, like the ability to look at somebody and basically scan them like an x-ray where you actually see their physical organs. I don't have that ability. I wish I did. So there's the power of like x-ray vision. There's the power of being able to psychometrize things. There's the power of knowing and seeing and hearing and feeling that we've talked about. And these things, these powers or abilities can be applied to the human energy field to look at those structures to find out where the distortions are, right? It's just like, you know, for anybody who's ever gone for a walk and you end up with something poking in the bottom of your foot, right? So you stop and you take off your shoe and you take off your sock and you start looking at the bottom of your foot. And you start looking for the black mark, whatever it is, the sliver, right? And then you find it. So the same thing, we can take the supersensory powers and look at the human energy field and find out where the damage is to bring healing to that. Go ahead, Adele.
May I ask you something sort of relevant to what she started with? If your clairsentience is just out of control, if you're just an empath and you've been suffering all your life with it and sick from it, and I mean, because you get so emotionally traumatized by people you love being hurt, can you stop that? Can you tell me how to stop that? Because I seem to have a family that, God love them, it's a lot of pain in my family, and I feel it all, and it's just almost more than I can stand.
I think it's a good question. I think that there is something that happens. So the chakra, the solar plexus center can sometimes be damaged. And I think that the state or condition that you're talking about represents a level of damage.
Okay.
There's sometimes people talk about a cover or a covering of the solar plexus center. And sometimes there is certainly more of a structure on the face of it. Okay, like the solar plexus center can develop to such a degree that there are actually inner vortices. Most people just have developed a cone shape. But so for you, Adele, and for the woman that I was just speaking with, I don't know her name, not you, Shanti, but
Jane.
Jane, let me look. Anne. I think it was Anne. So when I look at both of your fields, for instance, your solar plexus centers have been essentially opened from the outside. So what this means is that you've had people who have demanded your emotional allegiance to them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And does that resonate with you as well?
Yes.
Okay. So what this has done is that it's basically opened your solar plexus center in a way that is not normal. So we look at it this way, that you have somebody out here who's making demands on your solar plexus center, and they essentially pry it open for their own benefit. And then unfortunately, it leaves you open and vulnerable for everybody else who comes along who pries into your solar plexus center. Does that make sense?
Yep. It's a bad way to live.
And would you agree with that as well? You with me, Anne?
Sorry, I keep turning my mic off, and it's kind of hard to turn on and off on the phone. But yes, I got it. Yes. I'll leave my mic off for a minute.
Well,
unmuted.
Okay, that's helpful. So, in talking with you and Adele, let me just look at something really quickly. So I feel like in both of your cases, your relationship with your mother was the thing that opened you up. Do you resonate with that?
It was my father. My father. Yeah, he what he couldn't get from mother, he had to get from me. He was dysfunctional, but very loving, but he was very dysfunctional, and he felt really guilty about it. And then my mother wouldn't talk to him when he was dysfunctional after a while, so he had to turn to me and demand that I was always on his side, regardless of who he was hurting.
Okay, perfect. So what about with you, Anne?
Well, I guess maybe when I was a little bit older, yes, my mother had nervous breakdowns.
Okay.
You're not talking about, it doesn't have to be somebody that's yelling, right? Could be a different.
No, it's basically somebody who's placing constant emotional demands on you. That does not allow you to be in your own emotional space, but it leaves you emotionally vulnerable. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. And so this leaves you open to feeling the feelings of other people more than feeling your own feelings. And so that leaves you vulnerable. It leaves you in a place where information is continually pouring in because you've essentially been trained to experience the world outside of you emotionally.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Maria. Hi, Chris. From what I'm listening to you, to what you're saying, and it sounds to me, are you reading right now the people that are asking questions, or you're just explaining things based on their, just using them as subjects to demonstrate the material?
I'm using them as basically volunteer subjects. So like if I see something in their field, drawing on their fields as a way of teaching this information.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, so you have the ability that even though this is done by Zoom, to still be able to sense the people even though they are at distance?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I work with, so I'm in Michigan, but I work with people from all around the world. And I have been working with people from around the world for the last 12 years. So, you know, even though I'm in Michigan, I've worked with people in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Mexico, Europe, BC. And, you know, distance, it did matter in the beginning because my abilities were not developed to their full capacity. Not that I think that my abilities are fully developed to this point, but they have certainly grown and evolved significantly. Now, I think this is a great teaching moment. You know, again, when my intuition first opened, or the ability, my claircognizance first opened, it only worked intermittently. But as I worked with clients and as I continue to work with people, you know, not only did I have claircognizance, but the ability to see began to happen, began to appear. And then from there, as I continued to see things sporadically, I began to see things more consistently, more regularly. I began to be able to look at the human energy field. Even though it wasn't very clear, I still began to see it and began to see its structures more clearly. And then as I was talking to people at that point in time, sharing information, they might mention somebody, oh, my mom, or oh, my brother, or oh, my sister. And immediately I would sort of go through that person's auric field and into the person's auric field that they're referring to. So then I would start to know things about that person as well. And in this way, I gained the ability or the power to be able to read for people who were not present.
I see. Very interesting. It's just that based on the responses you were given, I said, I think he's able to sense them, and that's why I was asking this question from you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if I'm working with somebody, it's almost like I have a model of their field in front of me. So it's like a miniature version that I'm able to look at and look through and see some of the data around it.
Thank you very much, Christo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So is that why I was sick so much? Because I stuffed all my feelings? That I always stuff my feelings. I'm trying so hard to get rid of them. But I mean, I was sick my whole life because
I think that
I never felt my feelings. I just kept cramping them down to take care of the family.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the behind the sickness is, to me, the feeling of sadness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the thing that I think is there behind that. Any other questions or thoughts pertaining to the supersensory powers? I tell people that there are no stupid questions, but there are certainly plenty of stupid answers, right?
So I have
ahead.
a question. So you said you developed your supersensory power after your near-death experience, but is that correct?
It was an out-of-body experience.
I'm sorry, out-of-body.
Oh, it's okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a timeline so that way you have some understanding. So at age 16, I had an out-of-body experience. I began to study Theosophy and world religions from that point forward. And at around age 32 is when my intuition opened. And during the practice of meditation specifically, I would know things about people. I was teaching meditation publicly at that point in time as a form of seva, or service to others. And as I sat with them in meditation and led them through a meditation, I would know things about them. I mean, incredibly detailed facts of their existence that there was no way that I would know otherwise. So from the age of 32 to now 45, I basically have practiced 3 to 5 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week for 13 years. And that is the thing that has really opened my intuitive abilities and brought them under conscious control.
What kind of meditation do you do?
Well, I have done virtually all the forms of meditation that I know, but frankly, I think that the most helpful in terms of my intuitive development was the practice of Vipassana. And to me, Vipassana is nothing more than sitting down in a comfortable position and just sitting and observing the content of your mind. So as you sit there, you wait for a thought to rise, you look at the thought and you let it go. And you sit there again, you wait, and you wait for a thought to arise and you look at it and then you let it go. Now, this seems like a really simple exercise, but it is incredibly difficult to maintain an awareness, because oftentimes when a thought comes up in consciousness, the mind grabs a hold of it and spins it into a story. And then, after it's gone through like several different permutations, you're like, oh my God, I'm supposed to watch my thought, not participate in it. So then you stop the thought, you come back to meditation and you sit and you look again. Now, this is an incredibly powerful practice for one reason. In the Yoga Sutras, they talk about the chitta or chitti, right? This is the mind stuff. Now, what's really great about this practice is that it sensitizes you to the permutations of your own mind, the changes, the waves of consciousness. Now, it was at this time that as I was practicing Vipassana, that I actually began to be able to read the minds of other people. Because once you have become sensitive or tuned into your own mind and its own permutations, is that somehow it sensitizes you to the psychological imprints of other people. So this practice is incredibly helpful to be able to grow your intuition.
So what triggered your out-of-body experience, Christo?
I was around 16 years old. My father had injured his back in a work accident, and I was working to support my family, my mom, my dad, my brother. And I was working between 40 and 60 hours a week as a 16-year-old. And I came home one day and I was exhausted. I was tired beyond tired. In fact, I would consider myself the walking dead. I fell into bed and poof, I was out of my body. Now, what's interesting is that my original goal was just to find out what happened to me. And out-of-body experiences are oftentimes triggered by profound exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I know that there are different people take different paths of approach, but I've been a purist. I don't use drugs. I haven't used drugs in my research, because I'm of the opinion that, even though drugs might create an opening in consciousness, or in fact, I'll share a couple stories with you if you want to hear them. That'll help you understand that what sometimes drugs can do. So there was one time I was on an internet radio program, and there was a caller who called in before the show began. And the host of the show said, here, you have to talk to Christo. Maybe Christo can help you out. So she linked me with this guy, and he was just going, and he started talking. He was talking like a mile a minute. He was talking about all the things that he could see. He was talking about the things around him that he could see and hear and feel and know. And I was looking through his energy field as he was talking to me. And what I was able to see is that his crown chakra was actually opened through drug use around 5 years prior to my conversation with him. And so I said, well, I see that this actually was caused by the ingestion of some form of drug around 5 years ago. And the line went silent, and he said, I've never told anybody that. He's like, I don't even know how you know that. But he said around 5 years ago, I vaporized hash and I inhaled it. And it was from that point forward that I began to see and hear and know these things. So hash, like some other drugs like LSD, peyote, and some other drugs actually are resonant with the crown chakra. And so if you take any of these drugs, it is true that it actually does spontaneously open or blow open the crown chakra. But the problem is it doesn't bring it under conscious control. So what this means is that you begin to have all of these experiences that really border hallucinations. Does that make sense? So for instance, I've seen people who through the same process, they open their third eye and they begin to see things. Now, remember earlier I said that when the chakra opens, its functionality is partly dependent upon how much surface area that it takes up, right? So if you look at the crown chakra and it's in a state of hyperdevelopment, like if this is again a profile of a human being, and the crown chakra of a normal person looks like this, and the crown chakra of somebody who's in a hyper state of development looks like this person is receiving, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of information is constantly being downloaded into this person's consciousness through this hyperdeveloped chakra. It's almost like dilating the pupils of your eyes. Have any of you gone through that process where the ophthalmologist dilates your pupils?
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the world is like 3, 4, 5 times brighter than normal. Well, could you live like that? Most people would find it, I think, difficult to live under those conditions because your eyes would be constantly filtering in more light. So it's almost like when I was talking with, I think it was, I can't remember the first name, but the one with the super developed solar plexus center, right? That when you have it open to that degree, you have more information coming in. Now, the hyperdevelopment of a chakra, as long as it's not drug induced, is a normal state of consciousness. It's a normal state of our development. After a while, the chakra tends to go back into a normal state of high functioning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts, any questions?
Could you elaborate further on what exactly happened during your out-of-body experience?
Yeah. Yes. So it seemed like it took, so what happened was I got in bed and I just remember feeling that I was just beyond exhausted. I fell asleep and I woke up in this black void. I was somewhere floating on my back. There was this motion of movement, almost like I was on some sort of stream floating on my back. And I remember trying to move my arms and trying to move my legs, and I couldn't move anything. And I remember being stricken with fear because I thought that I had died. And I remember at that point just wanting to get back into my body. And then at that point, I sat up in bed, terrified, in fact. Now, as I researched out-of-body experiences, what I understand is that a lot of people in the very beginning of out-of-body experiences experience what they term astral paralysis. It's where even though you're out of your body, you're actually paralyzed and can't move. So that was the total of my experience. But I wanted to figure out what happened to me, and that's when I began to research world religions, psychology, spirituality, to try to figure out what happened to me. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. How long were you out of your body?
You know, to me, it felt probably like it was something like 15 or 20 minutes, but I can't really say what the true passage of time was. I sincerely do not know.
Besides floating, did anything else happen?
No, that was largely it. I mean, I just found myself out of my body, floating on my back. It was in a black void or black expanse. You know, I know that I was someplace different than where I fell asleep, you know. But it was not a long event, but it was just emotionally charged.
Were you refreshed when you came back?
No, I was terrified actually. I was like 16 years old, didn't know what happened, and so I was in bed crying for a while.
Did you have any kind of epiphany or anything?
I did not. I did not have any epiphany. I mean, the only thing that it really did was just excite a passion to know what had happened to me. So this is the thing that started my search into religion and spirituality. And it was at that point, or not long after, that I discovered Theosophy and started reading Besant and Ledbetter. And it was 2 to 4 years later that I began to study of the practice of meditation, which was really key to the development of my own supersensory abilities.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts or questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I know the time frame that you told us about, like the meditation. Like for someone who's working, it's really hard to find the time to really meditate for that long. So when you were working, how were you able to squeeze in that amount of time for meditation?
I was really dedicated. I was also young enough to where I didn't have children. I was going to school at the time, working on an associate's degree. I had a part-time job as well. But, meditation was meditation and spirituality was my primary interest. And so every morning when I got up, I would actually roll out of bed, roll onto the floor and sitting in full lotus basically. And I would meditate the first thing in the morning. At night, even though I was tired, I would sit beside my bed and I would meditate for 20 minutes, a half an hour, sometimes an hour. And then I would crawl into bed and fall asleep and then roll out of bed in the morning and start the cycle over again. I don't think that somebody has to go crazy with meditation. In fact, looking back, if I had guidance, I think I could have saved a lot of time. I think some of the most important, like the meditation that I described earlier, the Vipassana meditation, that meditation practice alone will take you incredibly far. It'll help you clarify your mind. It'll help you become familiar with your own motives and your own motivations. It'll help you understand your psychology. It'll help you understand the psychology of other people, and it will open your intuition. There's the meditation practice of just simply meditating on God as well. Krishna said, or it was either Krishna or Vishnu, meditate on me, and then all of these other things you will have. And I do think that that's true because I was looking for my pen. If we look at this, again, a meditator, right? A person who sits in meditation does what? They meditate on God. And so what that does is it focuses energy at the crown chakra, which continues to focus energy here, and eventually it results in the formation of a fully functional vortice. This alone will put you into contact with the mind of God. Okay? And then if you sit and meditate and the crown chakra becomes what I would call hyperfunctional, something really incredible happens. And I've watched this in myself and I've watched this in other people. When the crown chakra reaches a state of high vibratory activity, it actually begins to create vibrations downward in the field. What this does is it begins to ping, or begins to activate the ear chakras, and it begins to activate the third eye. Okay, and it brings those into a state of activity. So a profound love of God, or a meditation on God, closeness with God, a focus on God, it will activate the crown chakra, which then begins to activate the other supersensory powers that are located in the head. So if you are a devotional type, you could choose that path as well.
Thank you. So it's based on the quality of your meditation, not so much as the amount of time, pretty much, is what you're saying, right?
I think that the more that the practice of meditation is integrated into your life as something that your life revolves around, the more that it's integrated into your life as an internal practice, the more success you're going to have with it. You know, to be perfectly honest, I don't meditate a whole lot anymore. You know, I should, but the reality is I've spent so much time in meditation, I've sort of burned out my hip flexors. And I've burned out my pelvis from sitting in meditation for so long. You know, like I'm 45 with 80-year-old hips. So, you know, my recommendation too is maybe get a chair. You know, you don't have to sit on the floor in full lotus. Give your hips a break.
Have you done laying down meditation?
I have, and I have a name for it.
Yeah.
Who's speaking?
This is Shanti. I'm sorry. This is
Shanti. Yes. So
I do laying down meditation and the blessing of the energy centers.
Yes, you know, I have a joke about that. So I tell people that you can practice meditation in a chair, you can practice meditation in full lotus, and you can even practice meditation lying down, which I call sleeping.
Well, I actually don't fall asleep because I feel a tremendous amount of energy flowing through my body. And what happens is when the energy flows, actually my hands are moving quite a bit. So I don't know whether it is, whether it's rearranging energy or depending on which chakra that I'm focusing on, it is, my hands are moving, constantly moving. And if someone's close to me, I'm telling you, you can get your face whacked.
Oh yeah, well I think that it is possible to practice meditation lying down. I just joke because anytime I'm laying down and practice meditation, I will for sure fall asleep.
Well, yeah, it depends on what you do.
Yeah, but at this point, I give myself over easily to sleep. But hopefully that idea is helpful. You know, the practice of meditation, particularly on God or around God, it will certainly develop the crown chakra, which will lead to the development of the other chakras as well.
Thank you.
Hey, what is your goal? What do you want to do with it?
No, you know, I'm just a beginner. I'm just trying to basically just meditate more because everybody said that you need to have more clarity. And so, I mean, I just find myself like with my crazy schedule with work and children and everything. I mean, I try to do a little bit here and there in the morning, but it's not, you know, it's finding the time and like whatever time I have left, like you said, like I probably fall asleep if I sit there for too long. So, but I try to just constantly like I'm being more aware of my thoughts, you know, like practicing just being aware of like when you have negative thought, trying to throw that out. And so during the day, as I'm going about and doing things, I'm trying to bring my I guess mental focus in, like, okay, so like, was that a good thought? Was that, so I do a lot of self-reflecting. I just call it self-reflecting. And then I do that at nighttime too, but I don't necessarily sit down and actually do meditation as much as I mean, I know because being at the Theosophy, everybody's saying you need to meditate more. So, but I'm just trying to find a balance between like doing that with balancing with home life and work and everything. So I'm just trying to hear different things from different people. But yeah, so I'm trying to see what's really practical for me as a person that's busy with children and work and everything. So
yeah, I think it's difficult when there is so much going on, and the reality is I think that this is why particularly in India, there were different phases of life. And in the last stage of life, you could give up, you could renounce the world, and you could focus on your practice. Or I've known Indian families who, they have prescribed times of prayer or puja every day. And so, it's not about sitting there for 5 hours. It's about the time that you do have, the 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour of being present and dedicated for that time.
And making it a habit, right? Making it a habit, even if it's 5 minutes. And then once you get into the habit, the time just extends.
I do think that that's true. So even just these periodic points of during the day where your mind is focused, even present for 5 minutes, can begin to create a vibrational shift in your field. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I try to do it with my kids in the morning. Like we've been trying to get up and earlier and doing that as our morning routine. And on the weekend it's a little bit harder for us because everyone wants to sleep in. But I mean, I guess it's like with anything, it's more like a habit where after you be doing it for a while, you're beginning to it becomes a routine for you also.
Yeah. Well, when I first began the practice of meditation, I could only really sit for 5 minutes, 7 minutes in the beginning. And then as I continued to practice, I could sit for 10 minutes and then 20 minutes. And then lo and behold, an hour would go by. But, my body, it took a while to adjust to the pressure. I mean, because meditation really does hurt in the beginning stages. Like my physical body was just in a state of pain. I'm like, wow, this is really amazing to be in this level of pain, sitting. My back hurt, my legs went to sleep, my back was numb, but eventually my body got accustomed to sitting where I no longer noticed or experienced those sensations. Okay.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go ahead.
I have a question regarding feelings.
Feelings?
Yeah. So, I mean, you be to meditation, but I do a lot of spiritual stuff since my childhood. So during my pregnancy, when I think my second child pregnancy, I started receiving, started to see some kind of souls. I used to get scared. I used to scream. They wouldn't let me sleep. All this kind of stuff used to happen. And I have reached out to spiritual people. They gave me some kind of mantras to chant. I do that chanting. And it's now from, I guess from 6 months, I don't see anything like that. But I see some kind of energy. I mean, I've been seeing some kind of energy in the room. It's not like everybody sees it. It's like my husband, I'll be like, I get scared, like a huge spider kind of stuff which comes onto my face, or I see some kind of energies. I don't know if it is correct energies or not. I have been experiencing this later. Actually, one member from Theosophical Society, we started a satsang. Her name is Vidya Vasant. So as I started interacting with her, then I started understanding that's a good thing. Whatever was happening to me, it's not something that I need to be scared about. Later, now I'm not getting any of those. Now I'm worried, like, why am I not getting? Am I doing something wrong? So,
I think this is a really great example of sometimes the things that can interfere in terms of the development and use of the supersensory powers. For instance, in my own development, there was a point where my ear chakras were developing, and I found it very troubling to hear disembodied beings speak to me. Like it scared me, to be blunt. And I've seen other people who have an open or opening third eye who see things, and they get scared of the things that they see. So, our normal development happens, and then we have these experiences or reactions to them. I look through your chakras, and it's interesting, but your chakras are sort of cupped. So a normal chakra should look like again, a convolvulus flower, like a trumpet flower, or I think even a pansy. So where it has that convolvulus shape, right? But your chakras instead, they have this sort of cup-like appearance. So I'm going to take a top view. Do you see the difference? So this one is a normal one, what I'm drawing right now, and yours looks more like this. Usually when this happens, people are closing down their chakra to avoid allowing information to come into that center. I'm trying to think of another way of sharing this with you. So if the idea is behind a chakra and its functionality is to basically increase its surface area, to make it bigger, to receive more information, that some people naturally will constrict to make it smaller to avoid incoming information. So your crown chakra looks very similar to what I've drawn here, and your third eye chakra looks very similar as well. I think that there's an underlying fear of being pulled out of your life because of spirituality. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're afraid of that, which causes a constriction of your chakras. Okay, so you're avoiding that thing happening to you, being taken out of your life through having spirituality blossom or open and take your life over.
So how do I overcome this? Maybe I'm doing this knowingly or unknowingly.
Right. A lot of our reactions are unconscious. You know, most people don't say, look, I see people do something similar with their ear chakras when they're functional. They will close them down for one reason or another, generally because they don't like to hear what they're hearing. So again, it's trying to reduce the surface area to make them smaller, to no longer receive impressions or information through them. You know, I think it's always important to uncover what the person is defending against. But if I look at your field, there's this idea of, it's almost like if your chakras were to open, that you would become like it's not really a sannyasin, but there's like this fear of becoming taken over by spirituality. I don't know how else to say it. Go ahead, because you seem to recognize what I'm talking about. Tell me in your own words, what you're afraid of.
I feel that I'm in this life. I have to fulfill my responsibilities towards my family and my kids. So I always think that maybe if I go spiritually into it, then I don't want my kids to, miss me.
I see.
Maybe I'm bonded to the family. I think I'm
perfect.
There.
This is great, and I think that it's helpful for all of us to hear it. That really, if you allow me to interpret this way, I think it'll help you. I cannot allow my chakras to fully open because if they do, they may take me away from my family. That's what the fear is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I never tried that in those point of view that I need to open chakras. I really never worked in that side of angle. So I really don't know. I just sit and meditate or do spiritual Indian pujas, but I never or been to any chakra healing or chakra opening kind
right.
of form of thing.
But what happens essentially as you practice these things, it grows and develops your chakras. That is really the point behind puja. It's the point behind worship. So what you're saying essentially is that through your own practices, you have developed your crown chakra, you developed your third eye center, and it's caused you to have some visions or some spiritual knowing. And I think this has scared you because and what this means is that your chakras are developing. And when they do, there's the risk of it negatively impacting the structure and organization of your life. So in terms of your unconscious, you're saying, I don't want that because I have a responsibility to my family. Okay, so your unconscious is closing down your chakras and taking them offline. The reality is, it doesn't have to work that way. I mean, I have a 14-year-old and I have a 7-year-old. I got a basement full of stuff, and you know, I cook and clean just like everybody else does. And you know, I would say that my life gets more in the way of my spirituality than my spirituality gets in the way of my life at this point. So I don't think that you have to really worry about it. In fact, I would encourage you just to allow whatever your chakras are intended to develop, because it can bring you into a place of actually being able to see God and to know God directly. To me, this has changed my life more than anything, being able to actually see the energy field, being able to see God directly. So imagine what that would be like for you. Would it change, you know, how would that change your puja, your worship? I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Christos?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's actually me. This is Alfredo. I consider myself a hypersensitive person, and I have many moments of anxiety. I'm trying to, based on what you're telling us, I'm trying to connect the two, because I've never thought about the four categories of clair that you put there.
Yeah,
I never thought of that, and now that I come to think of it, what's the relationship between those two things?
Between anxiety, nervousness,
yeah,
and the chakras.
Yes.
I think that it would be different for each person, technically, but sometimes the development of these chakras can cause a strain on the person and their nervous system. So to me, the way that your crown chakra is opened, I believe, would cause an overload of your mental body. Okay, I think it would stress your nervous system, and which is really interesting because I feel like there's a couple of different causes. Like relationship with father could be one, or relationship with an older brother could be another one. But it looks like that you may have been picked on a lot. Is that true, or were you beat up a lot as a kid?
No, not beat up. Maybe picked on. Yeah.
Picked on a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that caused actually a fear state in you. It did a couple things. It caused your crown chakra to open, which then I think has overloaded. You could say that it's overloaded your neural, your neurons, the activity of your brain, and put you in a state of what I would call hyperactivity that way.
Okay.
Christo, this is wonderful, but we don't want you getting burned out because you've got 2 sessions to give us tomorrow. And so on behalf of the Houston Theosophical Community and the West Houston Theosophical Study Center, who's been the host for this evening, we would love to thank you. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 10 o'clock using the same Zoom address so we can learn more from you. And the Houston Lodge will be hosting tomorrow. And we're going to be talking about the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd logos.
Perfect.
And thank you so much. You were wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.